go. There's that recording. As I said, I'm really grateful to be here. It's been a challenging month or two. We all have a million things to do, taking care of ourselves, our families, the organizations we support and steward. These are not easy times. In that spirit, I do want to take a moment to recognize all the frontline workers who are fighting COVID-19 every day. Thank you for your service. We're grateful for your sacrifice. And we are, above all, privileged that we can spend an hour today in the comfort of our homes, learning skills that many might call first world problems. The essential question for today is, why is this board meeting different from all other board meetings? So we will learn and discuss equal parts facilitation skills, some Zoom techniques, and how to run effective board meetings. I hope it will be an interactive and experiential workshop. So we'll get started with the agenda. We'll do a little bit of reflection on our own experience today. We're going to do some sharing out. We have some really distinguished speakers and leaders in their own right with deep expertise. So I'm grateful that that they have volunteered or been voluntold to share a little bit. And then I'll share a little bit of what I've learned over the years teaching as a researcher, as a foundation professional, and then we'll do some closing, some Q&A, and some next steps. I hope that sits all right for you. I recently joined the Coro program in LA, the Lead LA program, and it brings together cross-sector leaders from the for-profit, nonprofit, and public sectors. And they always start every meeting with a POP, a purpose, outcomes, and process. So like none other, or to model, we will also start with purpose, outcomes, and process. So the purpose today is really just to learn how to better facilitate virtual board meetings. The goals or the outcomes, half of the pleasure for me is bringing you all together. Gathering is my game, as my consulting practice says. And the other half is sharing what I've learned over the years, researching and experiencing board culture and governance models. So I love to learn. I love to bring people together. In the process, you'll see here some reflection, sharing, and discussion. A few norms and Zoom etiquette tips. For one, we're going to use the chat to type questions. So anytime you have a question about what someone said, what I said, or you're just musing on something, feel free to put it in the chat. I am not saying I will get to it. I will try to get to them, and the ones that I don't get to, I will follow up in due time via email. So thank you for that. We're going to use a Google Doc that I shared early this morning, and I'll share that again in a minute, to type your reflections in. We're going to do some reflections together, and that'll be a way to stay connected and converse during the workshop. It'll be hard to have 80 people verbally talking, but to see 80 people writing together will be an interesting exercise. We'll also use that to be in touch afterward, and so we can use each other as a resource. As you're doing now, please just mute yourself when you're not speaking. And if you need to get up and go to the bathroom, get a glass of water, that's fantastic. That's fine. You should do that. Just turn your camera off so we're not all distracted. Whoops. 60 seconds, excuse me, 30, 60, 90 seconds on just who am I and what am I doing here and why are you all here? My background's in education. I was a high school teacher, math and science, public schools, private schools in the Bay Area, on the East Coast. After I was a teacher, I started a tutoring company. So I was a founder and CEO, and I ran a small tutoring company in the Bay Area for 10 years, providing one-on-one academic and test prep tutoring for K-12 students. We also had a adjacent nonprofit. So I had experience setting up a board, managing a board, developing a board, running board meetings, selling my company, and then dissolving the nonprofit. So another story in and of itself. I'm a board member, a proud board member of the Jewish Studio Project based in Berkeley. I'm a fellow in the new Lead LA program here at Coro. I'm recently a certified philanthropy advisor from 2164. And about 9 months ago, my family and I decided to pick up and move from San Francisco, where we'd been living for about 20 years. I moved back to Long Beach, my hometown, to be closer to family. As we made the move, I decided to start a small consulting firm called Gather. And briefly what we do is, or what I do is I work with philanthropists, foundations, and nonprofit CEOs, primarily on board culture, leadership and youth development, and philanthropic advising. I think folks hire me to be a network weaver, a project manager, a thought partner, and a data synthesizer. And I just love connecting people and ideas. So like I said, this brings me no greater pleasure than to be able to connect a whole bunch of diverse folks on this call and to share a little bit about what I've learned and to hear from you, because there are people way more expert and experienced on this call than I am. Okay, enough about me. You've all done this first part, which is great. Your name, your city, your organization, and your role. Take a minute, and I'm gonna put the chat back on here. I'd love you to think about one question that you have for today and share that in your chat. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to share out. I know who's on this call, but it's pretty impressive where folks are calling in from.
Seth, is there any way, is this because you have something up there, we don't see everybody, or something I got to do?
There we go. How's that?
That's much better than goddamn words, man.
All right, so now everyone can see everyone. Type in if you haven't identified yourself by name, city, role, organization, please do that. And then type a question that you're curious about. And I'll be able to go back through them. And if not answer them on this call, then answer them after that. So thanks for all throwing them out there. We have folks from Ann Arbor, from Boston, Chicago, Houston, LA, Miami, New York, Phoenix, Providence, Sacramento, San Diego, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. We have folks from the great state of New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, folks from Canada and Israel. So thank you all for joining. And in terms of roles, we have a diversity of roles. We have board chairs, we have board members, we have committee chairs, we have CEOs and executive directors, program analysts, program directors, founders, owners, consultants, and the organizations just spread, again, an incredibly wide-ranging group from foundations, national foundations, small family foundations, big nonprofits, small nonprofits, schools, JCCs, synagogues, consulting firms, public sector, private sector organizations. It's a real wide-ranging group. So I'm excited for everyone to be here. I see some really great questions coming in. You know what I'd love to do, if I can, I'll stop talking for just a minute. I'm just going to call on a couple folks, just maybe to introduce yourself and share the question you had. Gamal, are you still on here? Gamal Palmer?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Do you mind if I call on you for a minute? Can you just introduce yourself and share who you are and what question you have?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gamal Palmer, Senior Vice President of Leadership Development at Federation in LA. Good morning and Shabbat Shalom. One question that I have is some work that we are doing at Federation we're in a process of developing board recommendations. And I'm just curious if you have, a big picture, if you have ideas around how we continue those kinds of processes when they have not yet been fully implemented into the actual board meetings yet.
Great. Thanks, Gamal.
Sure.
Let's see. Who else I see? Amy Bourne, are you on? Can I call on you to introduce yourself and share a question?
I am. Hi, it's great to see everyone. I'm Amy Bourne. I'm usually in New York, but I'm in Pennsylvania at the moment. I work for an organization called Leading Edge, and my role there is Chief Strategy Officer, and I get to work with boards in the Jewish nonprofit space primarily. A question I have is not just about shifting to facilitating virtual board meetings, but is about in this moment, how to help make sure that boards are doing what they can to be supportive and staying in the right lane and the right level during this time.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Lisa, are you there? Lisa Farber-Miller, can you introduce yourself and share a question? Maybe Lisa's not there. How about Andrea? Can you introduce yourself and share a question?
Assuming I'm the only Andrea.
And, yes, thank you.
Hi. Apologies. Turned on my video late. Just finished working out. trying to stay active in this moment.
As you should.
Yeah, Andrea from Los Angeles, but the fundamental team, recognize lots of faces and names. You know, we have an upcoming board meeting in the next few weeks, and I think it's a multi-generational board, and so looking at strategies to engage the 82-year-old and also the 32-year-old, and what that could look like and what's meaningful for all ages in this moment, and we're engaging digitally.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. So that's great. So a brief snapshot of who's on the call, where folks are coming in from, questions on people's minds. I'd now love to share this Google Doc. You all received a link this morning. I'm going to share it again in the screen. Just give me one sec. And these are the questions, that I'd love us to think about. It's always good. There's always different tech, right? Think about your best in-person board meeting. The best in-person board meeting you've had. Recent board meeting could be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or last week. What made it so great? What was still challenging about it? And how might you recreate that meeting, that same meeting or that same aspect of the meeting virtually? So I'm gonna copy this link. I'm going to share it again for those. Oops. Give me one sec. Okay. There's the Google Doc. You can click that. You can also click what I shared with you this morning. I'm going to stop sharing now so we can see everyone's faces, and you can now still look at that Google Doc about what made your best board meeting so great, what was still challenging about it, and how might you recreate that virtually. Take, this is great, take 3 minutes to do that, just silently on your own. I'm gonna see, yeah, this is great. If you can, put your initials at the beginning so folks can see who's writing what. Excuse me. And as you're writing this, I'll just share this. I was a participant in an activity like this a few weeks ago with about 5 people, not 55 people. But it was a great way to just get a lot of answers or a lot of thoughts quickly and to share them. And again, the hope here, and of course I'll ask for permission to share, but it would be great if we can all, use each other as a resource. We all have, again, just deep expertise and different kinds of experience as a board member, as a board participant, as a board chair, as a CEO. And so I think using each other on this call and after is part of the hope for this workshop. Take another couple minutes. What made your board meeting so great? What was still challenging about it? How might you replicate it virtually? And after this, we'll be joined by some speakers to share a little bit more about it. Can listen to some music while we do that. Take one more minute. Those are great answers. Great reflections. About 30 more seconds. All right. So we have the distinct pleasure of being joined by a few incredible speakers and really folks who have some deep expertise here. I'm going to share the screen again just for a sec so you can all see who's about to come on. I thought, again, you don't want to hear, no one wants to hear one person talk for 60 minutes. So I will share a little bit of my learning, but after we hear from some other folks who, again, who have been at this a lot longer than I have. So first, I want to invite Phil Lee. Thanks for being here, Phil. Phil is the president and CEO of the Robert Sterling Clark Foundation in New York. I've known Phil for several years as a colleague and friend. He has been a mentor to me in the philanthropy space. He's taught me about leadership investments, about trust-based philanthropy, and has really been an exceptional model of humility and transparency. And so, Phil, I will stop sharing the screen, and I would love for you to riff on that first question to describe the best board meeting you've experienced and what made it so great.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be with you. I think what I'm going to share is what many of us probably have experienced in our best meetings, but really kind of having an engaged and really wonderful board people who are coming and they're prepared and they're really active and curious about what is happening and a desire to learn. I think for me, what makes that such a powerful moment is when the conversation actually is amongst the board members and not talking to me or to the staff, and that they are kind of finding ways to learn from one another, and the conversation is really generative in that way, and it really helps us as an organization move forward.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate that. Alicia Oberman runs and is the founder of BoardX. She used to run the Jack Miller Family Foundation and now runs a board member training program for Jewish nonprofits in Chicago. She's doing exciting work in the board training and education space. Alicia and I got to know each other while I was at the Jim Joseph Foundation. And I'd love, Alicia, you to share, again, either from your experience or from what you've heard, even in the best of board meetings, what is still challenging? What are the most challenging aspects of running good board meetings?
How long do I have?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Because I have
3 minutes.
Yeah. No, I think I'll name two quick things. Right? I think one is having the board feel like the time is valuable, right? Making sure that the entire board feels as if their time is being used in a valuable way. And so I think when board meetings expectations can be set high about level of preparedness, level of engagement, actually showing up with your full self. I think the more challenging board meetings I see is when they're there. And so you end up wasting people's time, frankly. And when you end up wasting people's time, you lose morale, you lose momentum. Frankly, you use the ability to use that brain trust that you have there. I mean, I always use this exercise. Like, imagine everyone is sitting around the board table with their expertise, bringing their full self. Like, how much you could possibly accomplish. So I think it's interesting. The second challenge is that there's a disconnect between the board and the work. And I really feel strongly that in each board meeting, there should be some connection to the work itself. Like whether it's what you call mission moments, or whether it's, because you can't always get the board into the field depending on what it is, but you will get them much more engaged when they feel connected. And I think often there is a disconnect between the actual work itself and the board process. So those I think are super challenging.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia. I'd love to invite Emily Sterling to chat next. So Emily is the founder and CEO of Olive Grove Collective in the Bay Area. I've known Emily for a similar number of years through her work at the Jim Joseph Foundation as a strategy consultant. And now that we're in a similar field, we get to have monthly calls to discuss and share ideas and new projects together. So Emily, my question for you, if you wanted to share a little bit about what are you seeing about how to recreate the best in-person board meetings virtually?
Thanks, Seth. It's great to see so many friends on this call, people I didn't know that were going to be on it. So hi, friends. So, I was looking at the list, the shared document of the elements that made up what people considered really great board meetings. And I think we want to retain those best elements, but how we do them may need to be a little bit different. So I have seen some people try to just literally do everything the same that they do in person and do it online. And that doesn't seem to translate as effectively. But if you think about what are you trying to get out of a great board meeting? So an open exchange of ideas and a safe place and hearing the perspectives, like really leveraging the diversity of the group, having, as Alicia said, that mission or purpose connection, the ability to socialize and have that kind of personal connection. So how can you do that online? So some interesting things I've seen is clients will open their online platform a half hour early so that people can figure out their tech stuff. But it's that like people show up 10, 15 minutes before the board meeting, they have a chance to chat. A lot of times online, we just start. So opening it up early and leaving the meeting open afterwards for people to have those really informal social moments and just time to chat, I think is an interesting idea. There's an interesting dynamic because virtually you need to have more control over the situation, like you're muting everybody when they're not talking. And in some ways that actually provides an opportunity because the oversharers of the world, of which I am one, I will just say is a very strong extrovert, it's an opportunity to sort of level the participation and to be able to invite people in who don't speak as frequently, to do things like go around the room, to leverage the chat boxes, to send people into breakout groups. So I think in some ways I saw Bill Rand's question around what can we do better virtually. This kind of idea of controlling the room, but toward the end of actually fostering greater diversity of voices, I think is a real opportunity for folks to explore.
Thanks, Emily. That's great. You must have peeked ahead. A couple of those are on my, I'm going to repeat those in a few minutes.
I got a little bit of advance information.
No,
so
you might have gotten
these are not all I don't claim to own any of these ideas.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And finally, Dennis Litkey, in full transparency, my uncle. He's the co-founder of the Met Big Picture Learning and College Unbound. He's been a mentor and a hero of mine for my life, my 40 plus years. And for his life, he's been an educator, finding new ways to educate one child at a time through interest-based learning. So Uncle D, if you wouldn't mind sharing a couple minutes about what makes your best board meeting so great. I'll unmute you now. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get extra points because I brought 4 people here. I get extra points with my family, my sister's on, so that's great. The most important thing to me that have a bit of ADHD is the meeting's got to be fun, they got to be active, and the board's got to feel when they leave that it was really worthwhile. They're really helping this organization. And probably the biggest thing that I've done in my med school and in College Unbound, we've never missed bringing our clients in. So that's the highlight. So I've had 600 students come in over the last 25 years at the Met. We have about 6 every time. And that's where people say they really understand it, not the bullshit from the people who are running the stuff. And same thing with the older people. So that's very important. The other thing is to keep quiet. Like, I'm also not good at that. So at our last board meeting, we brought in a facilitator that I hate. And we were refused to, myself and co-director were not allowed to talk. So it was really the best meeting we ever had. And it was a real situation. It was, we got to do a new strategic plan. What is it? And we stood back. So it's, I hear too many people on board saying, why did I go there? They just gave me information. And you can do that stuff ahead of time with budget. So to make them active, don't speak. We're trying to do stuff like do meals together. So if it's around 12 o'clock, everyone brings something together. So that's basically it. And I'm younger than Seth. That's what's incredible.
All right. Thank you all for sharing. I am going to, again, share the screen one more time and share a little bit about what I've learned. Whoops, there we go. And just a few caveats here. This has been, these tips are not exhaustive, they're not comprehensive. They are merely a snapshot of some of what I've learned as a board member, as a CEO, as a foundation professional, meeting other board members and researching board governance, board culture. I am gonna shout out a few folks on this call. Bill Ryan's on this call. He has influenced my thinking incredibly around generative governance. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So I will just dive in. Again, each one of these tips could be a 60-minute session in and of themselves or more. I'm going to give them each about 1 or 2 minutes. So bear with me. Feel free to take notes. I'm also going to share this with you all afterwards, along with some additional resources. So take notes or just listen. The first one, begin with a purpose. This was kind of implicitly implied, I think, with a lot of the folks who just shared. One of my recent heroes, Priya Parker, has a great book and TED Talk about gatherings. And she talks about the unfortunate part about most gatherings is they don't have a purpose. People don't know why they're gathering. And for a gathering to be special, you need to know why you're getting together. Why is this not just going to be another routine drudgery of a meeting? Is it to vote on a budget? Is it to connect socially? Is it to discuss a strategic plan? We need purpose to focus our time together. Relatedly, especially in these times, we need to be there for each other as human beings before we are there as board members and professionals. It's always great to start with a check-in question, just how are you doing? Takes on a whole new meaning in these days. Some connection to your organization's mission, like a mission moment or a Devar Torah for those. Priya Parker, she wrote an article recently in the New York Times talking about how we can be together apart these days if we have a purpose of gathering. She also says never open or close a gathering with logistics. So I'll be sure not to do that. So that's purpose. Number 2, be creative and thoughtful, or thoughtful and creative, while drafting a multimodal agenda. So I mentioned Bill Ryan. There are others, Rick Moyers, Marla Bobowick, folks from BoardSource, came up with a framework for a holistic board meeting agenda that really resonates. Of course, you want to discuss the budgets and your bylaws and your strategic plans, the fiduciary and strategic conversations that most board meetings have. But you also want to stretch yourself and stretch yourself for some more generative conversations and generative questions. What do I mean by that? Try reframing the problem, asking big questions and posing hypotheticals. What were to happen if we got a $50 million endowment? What would happen if there was a pandemic? These are provocations that keep boards learning and engaged at a high level. Don't stay in the weeds. That is for the professionals. And I think there's a lot more to say about that. Okay. Number 3, identify clear roles for facilitator, note taker, timekeeper, and observer. It's important that the facilitator has some good facilitation skills. The best board meetings I've attended are run by educators or rabbis or both. It usually is the board chair or the president in close coordination with the CEO or executive director. There should be a note taker or several note takers, someone who has good attention to detail and someone who can also kind of pick out the big picture. Maybe it's a program director, the COO of the organization. Someone should always be keeping an eye on the time and checking in with the president or chair, whoever's leading the meeting. And something I've learned more recently is the benefit of having an observer. Take a few minutes at the end of the meeting or the beginning of next meeting to share observations. Get up on the balcony, as a good friend, Marty Linsky, who's on the call, has shared, right? What did you notice? And were norms followed? It's a really nice way to just observe what people are doing and how they're doing it. Number 4, speaking of norms. So you want to review meeting etiquette, norms, and how voting will happen at the start. So these could be many different ways or done many different ways and done frequently. You might want to engage your board and professional staff in creating these together. Some quick go-tos, some of which we're doing right now, is muting yourself when you're not speaking, raising your hands, either physically or through chat. Being very clear about how you're going to use different technology like chat. Are you going to ask questions on chat? Are you going to look for clarifications on chat? Lean in and out. And what I mean by that is if you're used to speaking a lot, step back a bit. If you're used to being quiet, step up a bit. Voting could be done a number of different ways. It could be ayes and nays, by chat, raising hands, or email follow-up. I think you just want to pick one. And reading facial cues on Zoom. Not easy, but important to do. If you're about to vote on something, if you're getting to kind of alignment, I've been on calls where folks have like a thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down if you're ready to vote. To gauge people's temperature is helpful. Number 5, facilitate equity of voice so everyone is heard. So this is one of the toughest ones, I think. And this refers to the idea that those who usually dominate conversations historically and traditionally, such as older white men, might want to let others whose voices have been marginalized over the years to speak first and speak more often. Other people interpret this idea as don't speak twice until everyone has spoken once. And a good facilitator might even check in with someone who hasn't spoken yet to see if they want or if they have anything to add. Number 6, create a culture of inquiry and embrace curiosity. Again, tip my hat to Bill Ryan and his book, Governance as Leadership, and the work that BoardSource has done around a culture of inquiry. Again, more that I can say here, and there's going to be another session on this, but suffice to say, if you lean into your curiosity during board meetings, ask more questions than you answer, and embrace a beginner's mindset, you are bound to be surprised and enlightened. Board meetings should be places of continuous learning and professional development. I think of them as mini courses in a leadership curriculum. What skills do you want to sharpen? What do you want to learn? How will you strengthen the board as the board strengthens you? You can go on virtual site visits. You can study text together. You can learn some history about your mission or your sector. You can do all that via Zoom. And there's some great resources around that I'll share after. Number 7, offer frequent short breaks to keep bodies moving and minds engaged. Fairly self-explanatory, but again, probably underutilized how long we have to sit and work or in a meeting without getting up and stretching, going to the bathroom, getting some water, taking care of yourself. I've been drinking more water and going on more walks now than I ever have, taking more naps, and it's great. I don't know if I've taken a nap during a board meeting, but you know, To each his own. Number 8, you want to schedule social time for board members to get to know one another personally. So again, I think probably one of the most underutilized, and Emily, thanks for mentioning this, parts of board meetings. And you can do it via Zoom. Meet for 30 minutes or an hour before the meeting or after the meeting to share a drink, coffee, or just kibitz. It's so important to strengthen the ties that bind board members together, to know one another and be comfortable and vulnerable with one another, to know when others need support and know when others need to be pushed. Those are all important for high functioning and healthy boards. Okay, 2 more. Thanks for bearing with me, y'all. Number 9, rehearse and prepare the tech, lighting, and materials ahead of time. Of course, here, there are breakout rooms we're not going to do today, but on another workshop, I'm happy to share and discuss breakout rooms. They have worked really well. Think about the lighting. You want to make sure the lighting is in front of you or to the side of you. Put your computer at eye level or above. Not so great when you're facilitating like this. Not so great when you're facilitating like that. You want to kind of keep your face at a nice distance. Be mindful of your background. It took me about 30, 40 minutes to figure out what I was going to put behind there. There's virtual backgrounds that Zoom has. Do you want to be in front of a painting or a window or books? And then again, be mindful about what you're using chat or any other digital applications for. I think less is more. It's a Linden family value. The fewer applications, the better. And finally, and maybe most importantly, although these are all important, practice gratitude and joy to bring levity to your meetings. Be grateful for who is here. Like I said, these are especially crazy times. People are homeschooling while working from home. First responders are working overtime. The most vulnerable in society are even more so. Be grateful for the privilege to serve as board members and to the professional staff who do the day-to-day work. Think about what joy the organization brings to your life and include a bit of jovial fun to the meeting. I'll share one example. A great organization I know has what they call their beach ball moment. They have a beach ball that they write different questions on. And as if a board meeting conversation is getting dull or people seem to be a little bored or dozing off, they'll toss the beach ball around and they'll grab it and they'll read a question and they'll just kind of enter into a new conversation to hopefully liven it up and spark up a new idea. So think about what is your beach ball moment or what is your beach ball for your board meeting. So those are the 10 tips that I wanted to share. We're doing well on time. I'm going to go back to the chat and do about 10 minutes of Q&A. I'm going to look at some of these. What is a virtual beach ball? Yeah. Feel free to type some questions in here and I will kind of zoom up. That's a great question. How could you do a virtual beach ball? There's a great game I used to play when I was a kid. It was like, it's not ask big questions, but there's any number of big questions you could have cards of. In fact, 2164, shout out, they have incredible kind of provocative questions. But if you have these that you could share on a screen or that you could email out on a Google Doc beforehand, that you could kind of pick out one of those questions to share. I think the idea there is just changing the scenery and kind of pivoting from one conversation to another, again, just to keep folks engaged. Let me see, and feel free to either raise your hand or type a question in here. A Padlet, a virtual discussion board. Yeah, there are folks on here who have some great tech skills. And yeah, thank you, Kat, for sharing.
Somebody told me there's an exercise to pass a pencil. So if I did this and you're next to me, Seth, reach up or something and take another pen. You're at the wrong end. Yeah. Put a pen, then you pass it on. Yeah.
To Lisa.
That could be your beach ball.
There you go. There you go. I mean, there you go, Lisa. Oh, Lisa Bloom, Lisa Farber Miller. Yeah, a lot of different ways. I think the idea is, you know, you want to treat board meetings from my experience, again, as just learning opportunities to think big and to really, you know, figure out what are folks struggling with? What are folks really challenged with? And use the people around the table. Think of them, I mean, yes, they're your donors and they're your bosses, but think of them as your supporters and as your brain trust, you know, or as a sounding board for new ideas, for different ideas. Thanks, Amy. Mentimeter. Amy, can you talk about Mentimeter?
Yes, I've only used it once, but it was a nice icebreaker. Anyone could ask any question they wanted to of the group, and then whoever wanted to answer could. But it's kind of broke up the meeting and could be kind of a virtual beach ball that everyone participates in contributing a question.
Awesome. Thanks, Darby, for putting the the website for the these 2164 cards. And Melissa, what's the optimal amount of time? You tell me, do you need 5 minutes? Do you need 25 minutes? I mean, sometimes it's just a couple minutes to get everyone in a new kind of frame or mindset. Oh, what is the optimal time for a virtual board meeting? Sorry, for the whole meeting. I'd love to hear what other people say. I've been on, so far, virtual board meetings that are 2 hours, which seem about right. In-person board meetings obviously can last much longer, but I'd be curious what others would say for virtual board meetings. And feel free to write them in the chat. Yeah. I would probably say, I mean, here's one other thing, Melissa, is someone was about to have a board retreat, and they moved their in-person 2-day board retreat to a 5-hour retreat with, again, lots of breaks, probably a lunch or a dinner in there. Yeah. I probably wouldn't go more than that. And I also think probably anything less than an hour or even less than 90 minutes is probably too short, unless it's just a really quick update or kind of a quick discussion you need. Sharon asks, some of the people on our board are not tech savvy. They're intimidated by going on Zoom. Any ideas how to encourage them? I think just practice. I think doing some one-on-one tutorials, doing some small group tutorials, I think are great. One of the links I'll share afterward is Zoom has some incredible tutorials for folks. And yeah, I mean, it's just like anything, the more fluent, the more practice you get, the better, more confident you'll feel. And I think it's also maybe important to be explicit that Zoom is not easy for everyone. Board meetings are not easy for everyone. Zoom especially adds another layer of difficulty. And so maybe just sharing that this is new. We're trying this whole thing right now. What I'm doing is new. I appreciate you joining this experiment. But I think the more you can get folks to understand that their challenges or their intimidations are real, and that's okay. Their fears are real. And, you know, I've seen more kids and pets the last month coming on Zoom calls than I ever have. And it's great. I think people are starting to understand that there is more, people have an entire life outside of their work. And I think it's interesting. Some of the work I'm doing right now is around gender equity. And I think it'll be interesting to see how different roles will shift now that people understand that, oh, there's kids to take care of at home, there's childcare, there's household chores, there's a whole world of roles and responsibilities that we have away from our professional and volunteer lives. These are great questions. Stephanie, you want to share about your meeting, Stephanie? Are you still on, Stephanie Klasky?
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Our first meeting yesterday wasn't the full board, but it was a committee of the board. We call it our impact committee. So it's a lot about our fundraising, our storytelling, how we're sharing the impact of our work. And most of the meeting was focusing on two things. One, next week was supposed to be our annual gala. So we had postponed it about 6 weeks ago and rescheduled it for October. So part of the meeting yesterday was to discuss whether we should even have this 800-person million fundraiser in October, and we decided no. And then the second is working with this committee on the production of our annual report and deciding that the annual report was going to have a very different message this year, and we were going to make it very relevant to COVID. So we shifted, and it was a good meeting. Everyone was on, virtually like this. We did a shared screen so we could really go over graphics together and talk about what kind of stories we wanted to share in terms of the impact our organization has made during this pandemic.
Thanks, Steph.
But all the things that you had said in terms of engaging people, it actually was easier when we were doing it virtually like this,
Yeah.
to sort of call people, and it worked really well. I was happily surprised.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, I just, yes, and I think I was looking at another question Bill had around, is there anything that's easier to do virtually than in person? When you're in person, for better or worse, you're distracted, you're chit-chatting, you're looking at your email. I guess you could still be doing that now. There's all sorts of other things to kind of spread your attention. But when you are just looking at someone, and I can call on Dennis or Emily or Phil or Stephanie to just kind of answer a direct question, you kind of get, you get to the point, hopefully more quickly than you might in a in-person meeting. And relatedly, there was a couple questions just about how do you engage everyone. And I think, again, a good skill of a facilitator would be calling on folks, and making sure that you're not speaking twice until everyone's spoken once. If I see that, Rachel, you haven't said anything, is there anything that you want to add? And give someone the opportunity to ask a question or to share something, I think is helpful. And they don't have to, but I think just reading the room. I mean, so much of this, as I'm sure we all know, is about emotional intelligence and just kind of reading where people are and how people are feeling. I think that's, and that just gets better with practice. Take maybe one more question before we wrap. Anyone have a question or really just anything, any good experience that they'd want to share?
So Seth,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just me, but when people put up like material to read, it would be cool if it's an and both, so you can still see people and it's on the side,
right?
Rather than, it's less engaging when you're just seeing a post.
Totally. And it's fun. I mean, in full transparency, I was trying to figure out, again, the best modality for this. Is it a webinar? Is it a PowerPoint? And I'm glad. That's what I enjoy most, is just seeing a bunch of faces. And yet there is some information that's helpful to share. So yeah, you could share your screen, but then put half of your screen as the whatever is being shared and the other half as the gallery. You could also share stuff via email ahead of time, so you're looking at it like that, and can still on another computer or print it out, and then you can still see everyone's faces. Because yeah, that's right. Alicia had a good question. How do you onboard new board members in this environment? Alicia, great question. I'm going to keep that for potentially another workshop. Onboarding is challenging in person. And I think probably a lot of what we talked about is relevant, but yeah, that's a great one for potentially a future workshop. Get their input and get everyone involved, I guess I'd say, is the one or two things. Okay, this is great. Yeah, I think there's a couple of folks here on corporate boards, which is great. And I'm just reading that some of these challenges are exactly the same. And I also imagine that some of the challenges are much different or much less challenging on corporate boards. Okay, I'm going to share the screen one last time just for a couple quick thanks. You know what? I won't share the screen right now. I'll keep everyone's faces here because we like to see everyone's faces. And I'll say this. Again, just a lot of gratitude for everyone being here today. I want you to think about one thing that you've learned, and you can type this in a Google Doc or write it on a piece of paper or think about something that you are taking away that you will do differently. Learning is the act of changing your behavior. So how will your behavior change the next time you run a board meeting or the next time that you participate in a board meeting? Think about that. Second thing I want you to think about, and even you can do this right now, is go to your calendar and mark in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, mark some time that you're going to check in with someone on this call or someone on your board or a mentor, someone who you want to kind of check in about what you learned or what you said you were going to do differently. What I'd love to do, like I said earlier, is share folks' contact information, just emails with everyone, so folks can reach out. And if you don't want your email shared, then please let me know. You can let me know via email or chat. But there's some incredible resources of people on this call and from across the country, from across the globe in all sorts of roles. And like I said, I really hope that part of this, part of the value that I bring is really just gathering folks together like this. So feel free to reach out. The third thing, I know people are starting to go. I'm going to send out a really quick 3-question survey. I'd love your feedback. What was helpful? What wasn't? What do you want to learn next time? Because there are 2 more workshops that I'm going to put on May 1st and May 15th. And you'll get this in an email, both Fridays, so in 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks at 10 a.m. The May 1st one is going to be on setting the agenda. It's going to be a deeper dive into the fiduciary, strategic, and generative modes via Zoom. If I'm lucky, I'll get Bill Ryan back on and he can share a little bit. 2 weeks later, the May 15th session will be on boards and COVID-19, responding with urgency and planning for the future. Obviously on everyone's mind these days. And finally, I just want to share my gratitude and thanks for this hour. I know you have a million places to be. I'm happy to follow up with anyone after the call, and you will get, like I said, an email with these resources and a quick questionnaire. So thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great weekend.
Snowing in New England. Woohoo!
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dennis is throwing paper balls.
No, it's about to snow, man.
Oh.
I got an early start. All right.
Good job.
Bye, Nancy. Bye, Steph. Bye, Jimmy. Bye, Bob. Bye, everybody.
There we go. Bye, everyone.
Still don't know how to get out, man. Let's leave meeting. There we go.